So everyone, welcome today to this deep dive into the NALP Level 4 qualification. We're going to be talking all about that, exactly what it is, what it covers, how you do it, etc., and how it differs from the other qualifications too. Joining me on this webinar is Tom Mortimer, our Academic Director, and also Nigel Davey, who looks after our marketing. And I am Chantal Cook, the CEO of NALP. So I'm going to jump straight in very quickly to explain that you might have noticed that the level 4 was originally a certificate and it's now a diploma qualification. So just a quick bit of information on that. This is a change because we looked at feedback from learners and we looked at the amount of time it was taken for learners to actually study for this qualification. And we realized that it was at a diploma level, not at a certificate level. So we've been through the process with Ofqual and this qualification has now been upgraded to a diploma. For any of those of you who've already done it and graduated, you will have been contacted either by us or by your centre, and your qualification will automatically be upgraded. And for those of you currently studying, then don't worry, you're automatically upgraded. And when you get your certificate at the end, when you pass, that will show that you've done a diploma qualification. So that's just letting you know that that's the situation. That's what's happening. If you're confused about that in any way, please do get in touch with us or your centre. So I now want to bring Tom into the conversation. So Tom, let's get started. When we refer to a level 4 qualification, let's kind of get the basics out of the way. What do we mean? And how is a level 4 different from a level 3?
Basically, the levels are laid down by government and they have taken advice from educational bodies such as Ofsted, Ofqual, the Office for Students, and other interested parties. And what they have come up with is a national system which applies to all schools, FE colleges, universities, all other providers. And what that enables us to do is it enables us to compare level 3 qualifications in one area, for example, health and social care, with level 3 qualifications for paralegals. And what we know is that because the people who design those qualifications are guided by these principles laid down by government, we know that the standards of those qualifications are comparable. So that's in broad terms what they're about. So how is a level 4 NALP qualification different from a NALP level 3 qualification? And I think the answer to that is that there are a number of differences. Some of these will come on to specifically when we talk about the subjects later on. But in terms of broad principles, the first way that they are different is through the learning outcomes. So, for example, if you look at a level 4 qualification, that will tend to use words such as, we are looking at a more detailed level of knowledge, or it will talk about things such as a thorough understanding, or it will say that we expect learners to be able to analyze material. And what all of those expressions are telling us is that the standard which is required is different from level 3. So essentially, to put it very simply, we are looking at greater depth at level 4. And the marking criteria that we will use will reflect that expectation. So if I again can give you one specific example, at level 3, we would expect learners through their multiple choice and their problem-based questions to be able to show the examiners that they have knowledge of law. They know what the basics are, if you like. They've got the principles, the foundations. Whereas at level 4, the marking criteria will, of course, still expect you to be able to demonstrate and evidence that knowledge, but that is not the main focus of the marking criteria. Instead, the focus is much more about why and how. So, in other words, we're interested more in not so much what is the law on something, but why is the law structured or put together in the way that it is? And how does that structuring affect the way that the law operates, or, for example, the way in which the law might be improved?
With that, then it sounds like there's a different depth of learning and knowledge required in the level 4, but also a different, it's reflected in the way the questions are also structured, and the kinds of answers that you're asked to give as well. So it's both the content and also the exam at the end, for want of a better expression.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
Now, I guess we kind of answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I think it is a really important one to understand. Is when you look at the level 3 on the website and you look at the level 4 on the website, you'll go, well, hold on a minute. Those units look like they're exactly the same. Why wouldn't I just jump straight to a level 4, or why do I have to do a level 4 if I've already done a level 3? And I guess it is about this depth, isn't it?
It is. And I think it's also about, as you said before, it's about the expectation. I mean, if I can give you a slightly different example in relation perhaps to our specific units. If you look at, for example, English legal system, or as it's referred to at level 3, introduction to law. Now, it might look, when you look at the qual spec, it might look as though those two units are very, very similar. And on one level, of course they are, because you need to know what the court structure is. You need to know that the legal system in England is based on statute and it's based on case law. You need to know who the main players in the law game are, that barristers, solicitors, paralegals, what's the differences between them, and so on and so on. So, of course, there is some overlap between level 3 and level 4. But the key point about level 4 is that you take that information and you move it on. So, again, if I can give you a specific example, at level 3, one of the things that we discuss is we discuss the way that law comes about through acts of parliament. So we talk about the process that a piece of legislation has to go through in order to become an act of parliament. But that's all we talk about. So it's just focused very much on the process. When you get to level 4, then of course we will still talk about that process, because we will have learners that are coming to us at level 4 that have not completed the level 3 with us. They may have done it elsewhere. But what we then go on to do is we then go on to look at not just what that process is, but what happens when that process is not clear. So, for example, let's imagine that you come across a piece of legislation that talks about a month. Now, at level 3, you wouldn't go into that in any depth. At level 4, you will, because what we will talk you through is how a judge would interpret that word month. How would they decide what the word means? Is it 28 days, 29 days, 30 days, 31, a lunar month, a calendar month? And that's just 6 examples off the top of my head. And the answer is that the way that we answer that question in law is we use something called rules of interpretation. So, what you will do at level 4, in addition to what you've done at level 3, is you will look at what those rules of interpretation are, which enable judges to be able to interpret those words or those expressions. And importantly, for us as lawyers in practice, what that then means is that because we know what those rules are, we have got an inclination, we have got a guide as to how we think those rules might apply, and therefore how our client might be advised on the particular word or words within that piece of legislation that is the issue that they are looking at. So hopefully that demonstrates the way that we move from simply process to much more looking in depth at the way in which that process operates in practice.
When we look at the units that are available, what's the rationale for choosing those particular topics? Because we could have chosen a whole load of things. So why those ones?
Indeed. And that was something that we spent a great deal of time thinking about. And one of the things that we did as part of that process was we talked to practitioners and we asked them, what are the subjects that learners in practice are most likely to come across at the levels that we were looking at. So what we did at level 4 was we chose to look at areas which are much more likely to be the areas that people working as associate paralegals, which is what level 4 is about and what it's aimed at. We chose those areas. If you think about it, the law of tort, for example, tort is just a very old word that means a civil wrong. So to put that in practice, it's talking about things like negligence. So if you think about being in practice, one of the common things that you might deal with are things around personal injury. That is what we call negligence, because very often that personal injury has been caused as a result of negligence. Likewise, employment matters. One of the very common things that will come across the desk of lawyers are issues relating to contracts of employment or dismissal, whether that dismissal is fair. And those again that's an area that is very, very common. Criminal law. Criminal law is probably the area that most learners think about when they think about law. And if you think about all the programs on television, many of them, in fact, most of them, are criminal law based. And that is very often what entices people to come into legal practice, those things that they've seen. So all of those factors, the fact that they're very common areas in practice, the fact that they are the areas that you are most likely to come across at this level, all of those influenced our choice and our decision to include the units that we have included at level 4.
Now let's have a look at how you study the level 4 and the assessment process. So I can quickly fill you in on the how, which is you would find a NALP approved centre. You can do that via our website, and then you choose which centre suits you best. And the different centres often offer different ways of studying. So you can do it in person, hybrid, completely remote, with a lot of support, more kind of looking after yourself, whichever suits you best. So in terms of the how question, that's really a find yourself a centre from our website which suits what you want to do. Have a chat with them, call them, find out which ones do it the way that you would like to do it. Talk to the ones that you feel most comfortable with. So at that point, you've now decided how you want to study it. So whether it's remote, in person, or whatever, you've chosen your center. Hopefully, you're studying all of these topics, which are going to be very useful to you. Then it comes to assessment. So how, as a learner, am I going to be assessed when I'm doing the NALP Level 4 diploma for Associate Paralegals?
Okay, the answer to that is that you will have to go through two elements of assessment. And those two elements of assessment are multiple choice questions, and they will make up 60% of your final total mark. And what that means in practice is that you will have to undertake a test. We have NALP has a proctoring service that carries out those multiple choice tests on our behalf. And you will have to undertake a 45-minute test. During that 45 minutes, you will need to answer 30 multiple choice questions, which cover the whole range, the whole breadth of the syllabus that you have been asked to look at for each of the 4 units. And in order to pass that multiple choice element, you will need to be able to achieve 21 out of 30 of those multiple choice questions. And as I say, that will make up 60% of your final mark. The other 40% is made up of an assignment element, or what we call problem-based questions. And what these problem-based questions are is essentially they are small stories, scenarios, and you then are asked to read those scenarios, answer the questions that follow, and what that enables us as examiners to do is to look at your understanding of the law. So it enables us to look particularly at the way that you apply the law. Because if you think about it in practice, no client is ever going to come into your office and say, tell me all you know about how I prove negligence. If they do, my advice would be ask them to leave. But what they are likely to do is to come into your room and say, I was crossing the road and I was hit by a car being driven erratically. As a result of that, I've broken my leg. What do I have to do in order to be able to be compensated? And that is the key question. So, in order to answer that, you need to be able to apply the theory and the knowledge that you have read in the units, apply that to that scenario, and then advise the client accordingly. And again, the marking criteria will be much more at level 4 based on the application of that knowledge rather than simply you reciting the rules that there are 3 elements in order to prove negligence. So it is much more about the, as I said before, the why and the how, the use of the law, rather than simply a recitation of what the law is.
And I guess this is another example again of how the level 4 is different from the level 3 and for that matter, the level 5, because the way of assessment and the weighting of the assessment is different as well.
Exactly that. When you go on to level 5, the multiple choice questions become less in terms of their percentage, but the problem-based questions in terms of their weighting increase. And this again reflects that what we're moving away from is less about your ability to demonstrate evidence of knowledge, which is essentially what the multiple choice are testing, and more towards your ability to be able to apply and to use. And the other important thing to say is that the number of words that you have for level 4 is 4,000 words. Now, that is significantly more than you have at level 3. And again, the reason for that is we want you to have that capacity, that opportunity to be able to discuss those issues in greater depth and demonstrate the evidence of your depth of knowledge.
And then once you've been through the whole of the level 4 diploma for associate paralegals and you've hopefully come out the other end, you've got your diploma, it's all good. What do you get then? Kind of what do you have now that you have that diploma?
Okay, well, I think the first thing to say is that what you have is a big well done. But the second thing to say is that that then entitles you to what are rather pompously called post nominals. And all that means in English is it entitles you to put the letters A.NALP after your name. And what that demonstrates to the outside world, and more importantly to your current or future employers, is it demonstrates that you are an associate of the National Association of Licensed Paralegals. And what that means in real terms is that it shows that you are able to operate in practice at a particular level. And because you have a level 4 qualification, it shows that you are able to evidence the opportunity and the ability to be able to take some responsibility, some individual responsibility in relation to that qualification. And it also means, of course, that you become eligible for other level 5 qualifications, whether that be that level 5 with NALP, or whether that be other level 5 qualifications in other places. And that goes back really to our first point about these qualifications being comparators. So the level 4 from NALP is equal to a level 4 from other organizations. And that equality is basically evidence of recognition. It shows that those other providers will recognize the qualification which you have achieved.
And of course, the other thing we should always point out that having a qualification that is Ofqual recognised or regulated is really important, because then you know, and everybody else knows, that the qualification that you've studied is a quality qualification. It's a qualification that has been kind of looked at and is fit for purpose, as it were. So I think with any qualification, you want to make sure that you've got that Ofqual regulation next to it. And of course, then when you've got your level 4, that does make you more attractive to employers, because at the end of the day, I'm going to guess most of us are looking for jobs. So, if you're studying at the moment, either you're lucky enough to be employed, or perhaps you're in the process of looking for a career as a paralegal, then having a level higher qualification always will make you more attractive, because you have to look at these things from the employer's perspective.
Absolutely.
And better qualification, potentially better employee, more attractive when it comes to the job market and so on.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for that, Tom. We have got a quick question, and it's from Charlotte, I think, and it's how many hours a week would she be studying for the level 4? So I'm going to let you answer that, but I'm also going to, Charlotte, direct you to our website, because if you download the qual spec on the website, that will tell you all the information about how many hours are involved. Basically, it kind of gives you much more information about that. But I will pass over to Tom for a quick answer now before you get a chance to download that.
Yeah, I think my advice would be the same. Look at the qual spec, because that will give you also a breakdown. What we do is we basically break the time down. It's called total qualification time, and it's broken down into, if you like, the taught element or the learning element, and then separately into the self-study element. And in order to become a level 4 qualification, it's those two things together that were part of the reason why we went from a certificate to a diploma. So I think, to give you a direct answer, I think that if you're at a level 4, if you are working, I would say somewhere between 5 and 10 hours a week, that will be, you will certainly in that time be able to have time to get on top of the material that you are looking to cover per unit. So if in very, it's always very difficult because it varies from learner to learner. And sometimes you will look at things and you'll very easily remember them. And other times you'll look at it and think, I haven't got a clue what that's talking about. And it will take you longer. And it's just the nature of study, really. But as a ballpark figure, if you think about 5 to 10 hours a week, then you're not going to be far out.
Lovely. And of course, you do have 2 years in which to complete the
Exactly.
qualification. So if you got time when you can't do it, you can kind of catch up that time afterwards as well. And should there be any problems, heaven forbid, a bereavement or a serious illness or something like that, then you can always contact your centre as well about having a little bit of time extended. So these are things that's known as either special circumstances or reasonable adjustments. So reasonable adjustments might also be things like if you have got an illness and you can't sit for too long or something like that for an exam or something, there may be elements of reasonable adjustment there. But for anything like that, if you're worried about those kind of things, you think, oh, I've started the course, but I can't finish it in time, or I'm really struggling, or I need some help or whatever, then your centre is always your first port of call. They'll be able to talk you through that. They'll be able to support you and they'll be able to help you with that as well. That information is also on our website if you need it. But as I said, I would actually recommend in this instance that you most definitely talk to your centre as the first place, as I said, the first port of call. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tom. We don't have any more questions, so I think you must have covered everything that everybody wants to know. So thank you so much for filling us in
You're
on
welcome.
the NALP Level 4 Diploma for Associate Paralegals. It's very much appreciated. And if anybody does have any other questions about that qualification, do please contact your centre or contact NALP Direct, and we'll be able to help you with those. We wish you the very, very best of luck in your studies as well. And don't forget, you could be winning an award because we always give an award each year to the learner with the highest marks of that particular qualification. So there's something to aim for as well. So thank you so much, Tom. Thank you also for Nigel for your help in the background. And thank you to all of you for joining us today to look more deeply into this NALP Level 4 qualification. And we look forward to seeing you at future webinars as well. Take care.